going, my soul shudders as I think about being damned to hell if I was ever part of something like that, or abortion, or any of it. And I'm not judging people that were part of bad things on accident who were deceived, but to have the knowledge of good and evil, to know what's bad, to know what's corrupt, to know what's anti-human, and then to decide to join with it, like the UN and others have done. If you just joined us, I'm going to bring this up with one of the biggest NSA whistleblowers ever, one of the first, Wayne Madsen. We've got William Binney, former head of their internal operations, a director of the NSA, going public, saying it's a total tyranny takeover, pointed at the general public. We have AT&T execs going public saying the NSA hubs are inside. We have, of course, folks that have run off to other countries and run off to Russia like Snowden. But Madsen is really the original guy that testified to the EU Parliament, the British Parliament, to Congress and others, who really knows how deep the rabbit hole goes from day one. He's kind of a clearinghouse. He even had to leave the U.S. last year for a while because they're, no kidding, he was told by high-level sources, had a hit team out to kill him. But then that contract expired. I want to talk to him briefly today, if he can go a little bit in the next hour, also about, has he seen Kill the Messenger with Gary Webb? I knew Gary Webb well, interviewed him many times. We were going to build a website together when his new book came out. He said his home was being broken into, and then they killed him. And I was very pleased to see the film, and they implied that they killed him at the end. They don't go with the baloney line. You know, the family was threatened to shut up when it all happened. I don't want to be shot in the head twice. You know, if they kill me, I'm not looking forward to it, but that's part of standing up against these people. That's part of being a warrior. I'm ready for it. I don't look forward to it, don't like it, but the only way you don't have fear is just deciding you're already dead. What I do care about, though, is not letting them lie and say that I killed myself. Torturing me to fill out a thing or threatening to kill my kids, all that stuff. I don't know what I'd do if they were threatening to kill my kids if I didn't fill out the suicide note. That's what they do. But I've just gotten myself ready for that. I'm not trying to be theatrical. They killed over 1 million Iraqis. The globalists did. They have been killing people all over the world. They have torture camps everywhere. They just want to sell us on going along with it. And I'm going to get into this with Wayne Madsen. Secret project created weaponized Ebola in South Africa in the 1980s. And I'm so glad that Dan Taylor, who's an amazing writer and who runs Old Thinker News, be sure and check that out. We publish his stuff at Infowars.com, republish it. Went back, because I'd totally forgotten about all these South African scientists on record where they were working with the U.S., Israel, and Europe to create race-specific bioweapons to target blacks and then Arabs. He has successfully created one that would kill in black women. It would trigger in black women. It was tailored. It would have some effect on whites, but a more powerful effect on black women to create an autoimmune response to sperm. And, of course, it also causes inflammation and problems in the women every time that would happen. And it causes endometriosis, so it's also a soft kill. Just like the African tetanus shot had the female hormone that's secreted in the second trimester, that's released. And then once that's released, it causes an autoimmune response in the ovaries and the uterus as well. It doesn't just kill the baby. And they have a miscarriage at second trimester, at the 4th month every time. By the 4th month, it also tends to kill the woman. All this was declassified. And I'd totally forgotten. I'd just say, yeah, you know, all the secret testing in Africa. Well, that's not enough to just say that. You've got to go back to why they have top newspapers over there saying they believe the Ebola virus was souped up. Secret project created weaponized Ebola in South Africa in the 1980s. And this story, you know, links to mainstream newscast about it in the BBC and others. Operating out of South Africa during the apartheid era in the 1980s, Dr. Wouter Basson launched a secret bioweapons project called Project Coast. Race-specific. I remember a Project for the New American Century document published in 2000 in the Austin American-Statesman calling for the legitimate use of race-specific bioweapons to just see what the public would do. Now, the Statesman editorial staff is the only paper I've ever seen do it. They fired back the next week. You can pull this up. You can find it on LexisNexis or Google. It's like 14 years old. Just type in... I'm going to go to Wayne. I'm kind of wound up here. And the Statesman decried the call for race-specific bioweapons. That's the same group that called for staging terror attacks to bring in martial law. That's how dumb they think we are. Now, briefly, if you're watching me on TV, you notice this isn't just pure water, filtered water. It's also got the Survival Shield X2 in it, the Super Male Vitality, the Silver Bullet Colloidal Silver, and the secret sauce that should be here in the next month. I'll just tell you this. It's a very well-known vitamin that isn't very absorbable by mouth or even under the tongue, but is by injection. We're coming out with something. We're going to publish the documents on this and things that is a higher level absorption that you take as a liquid. Very special form of this, and it's secret, where we're having to get it trademarked and looking at patenting it and things. But the point is that this is going to be called secret something. I'm not going to tell you what it is yet, obviously. But your purchases support the broadcast. Whether it's the Oxy powder that just get a bottle, you're supporting the broadcast, and just see what it does for you, flushing out your guts. Nothing like it that I've ever taken before. And I've done some cleanses before. Just nothing like it. It's over the top. Just try a bottle. I know you'll be a repeat customer and support the broadcast, but most importantly, support your immune system and your body's natural ability to fight things off. DNA Force. Survival Shield X2 is just as important in my medicine cabinet for the body's natural defenses as colloidal silver, maybe even more. Fluoride Shield for chelating, detoxifying. InfoWarsLife.com or 888-253-3139. InfoWarsLife.com, the very cutting edge of nutraceuticals. InfoWarsLife.com or 888-253-3139. Now, John Bound has a report that we're going to post on Infowars.com the next 20 minutes. And next hour, I'll premiere it here on the radio, dealing with the fact that the CDC is now saying Ebola is now living 42 days, not 21. Details of that coming up. But Wayne Madsen of WayneMadsenReport.com, author, researcher, journalist, he broke the D.C. Madam story, got her on the show right before they killed her, speaking of that. So this is very serious when I talk about death threats. And I mean, there's a reason Glenn Beck now has a security team of 50 people. He's given into the fear, and I feel so sorry for him. I won't do that. It's all in God's hands. But the system is threatening and doing a lot of dirty tricks right now. They got people in government, out of government. It's amazing. They're making their move. Don't let that intimidate you. If you're low-level fighting the tyrants, you're under the radar, in my experience. It can do devastating damage in the info war. So don't let their intimidation work on you. I don't talk a lot about this stuff because I don't want to do their work for them. But I believe you're not cowards and will take action and get prepared and speak out. But the enemy is moving on all fronts. Wayne Madsen, where would you say we're historically right now, A? And then B, I want to look at Ebola, because we've got an International Business Times article, CBS, you name it, are attacking us, that we dare say that it could be made in a bioweapon lab, when the West has admittedly been weaponizing Ebola, not just South Africa. I mean, we'd have to be crazy not to at least look at that. So what's your take on Ebola? And then we'll move into a lot of other areas. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, Alex, good to see you, hear you again. But anyway, I have a story up today on Ebola. If we remember, the first outbreak of Ebola was in 1976 in then Zaire, now the Democratic Republic of Congo. If you remember, back then, the news reports at the time, including the CBS, NBC, ABC, all said this is a terrible disease. It causes the organs in the body to turn into a jellified mass. It's 88% fatal. There were outbreaks at first in southern Sudan and then in Zaire. Then we were told that it was contained in these hot zones. There was even a movie made about it with Dustin Hoffman called The Hot Zone, about the outbreak of this hemorrhagic fever in Reston, Virginia. There actually is a Reston form of the Ebola virus, but it's supposedly the least harmful.
But it is airborne, if that's the one that got out in '89.
The original World Health Organization reports out of Zaire in '76 said it could be transmitted by airborne means. That's not me saying that. That's the World Health Organization. But remember, in 1976, the CIA, then headed by George H.W. Bush, was fighting an illegal war in Angola using Zaire as a base. Zaire became a major CIA base, not only for supporting the guerrillas fighting the government in Angola, but also helping the southern Sudanese rebels against the government in Khartoum. So Zaire was a major, turned into a major petri dish for Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, who was the CIA's Dr. Frankenstein, more like Dr. Strangelove, who came up with all these diseases that would attack humans, crops, and animals. And then there was even cross-species jumping from animals to humans.
And imagine how bad it is now with all the DNA and RNA control they have. And that's exactly what the South African press, mainline press, reported that was declassified in these hearings in the 90s. And that's who Wouter Basson worked for, was just a front for the CIA. And let's not forget Israel. Israel has admitted to some of the fact of working with him.
Right. And I'm glad you mentioned Basson. Project Coast. He was Gottlieb's South African counterpart, and Basson. Remember, Stephen Hatfield was identified as a person of interest in the anthrax, a postal mailing incident, and the FBI sent teams to South Africa and Zimbabwe to investigate Hatfield's role in helping the Rhodesian Selous Scouts. Again, in the 1970s, in the same time frame, we had the Ebola outbreak in Zaire and also South Africa's bio-war programs. And in South Africa, it was Project Coast, headed up by Basson.
And then the word is, by the 80s, for nuke technology, we know South Africa got nukes right before they traded race bioweapons to Israel for the nukes. Absolutely.
So, that was an unholy alliance between Israel and South Africa, and also the CIA and Rhodesia to basically foment these and support these civil wars in places like Rhodesia and Angola and Southwest Africa, and also they were active in Zaire and southern Sudan. So there was a reason we saw the first Ebola outbreaks in southern Sudan and Zaire, because that's where the agency was active in using these countries and these poor people who had no idea what was happening to them as petri dishes. Now, the charge that people got this from eating bushmeat, I think that's a pejorative comment by people trying to say, oh, well, it's those Africans eating fruit bats and dead animals they find on the ground. I think it's racist to suggest that, because the first person who contracted Ebola in southern Sudan in 1976 was a cotton factory worker. He had a middle management job. He was educated. And the second person in Zaire was a school headmaster. So to suggest that these people were somehow living off the land, I think, was ridiculous. I think the CIA put that information out to basically, you mentioned the Kill the Messenger movie. Well, they were trying to kill the first victims of Ebola by character assassination.
Well, Wayne, what's amazing about you, and I'm just pointing this out for listeners, I hope they realize what they're hearing. I've done deep research into this. And it doesn't matter what subject I bring up, you've done just as deep or more, and without notes, are just spouting all the data. I mean, I just don't know how you've done so much research. It really is amazing, and always great to have you on as an analyst. I think we need to hire you as a routine correspondent, at least part-time. That's all I've got in the budget. And I know you were here last year. We were talking about that, but I got caught up in other stuff and had some funding issues, but we're doing better right now. I mean, just there's so much that you know. What's your gut on this Ebola and where it's going? What do you think it's really all about?
I'm suspicious where we had the outbreak this time in Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. These three countries are very, very rich in natural resources, especially gold, diamonds, and iron ore in Guinea. The first case in Guinea was very close to this Simandou mining tract, which was actually long sought after by the richest guy in Israel named Benny Steinmetz, who actually tried to foment a coup d'etat when he had his mining rights stripped from him by the government of Guinea, because he was caught trying to overthrow the government. So they reacted and said, look, you're not going to do business here anymore. And the FBI put Steinmetz under investigation for violating the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, because he was accused of paying bribes to the previous government of Guinea. The new government, President Condé, basically canceled all the agreements with Steinmetz. And I find it very interesting that the first Ebola case in Guinea, which is the Zaire, the very deadly